right, I've got 6:30. Although the meeting still says 1 minute on my little calendar bug, we'll go ahead and get started. If you'd like to, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance however you can. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. Thank you very much. And I believe I forgot to say we'll convene the meeting for May 17th, 2022. So we will do that here on a gray spring day in Laramie, Wyoming. Let's go ahead and get started with the first items on our agenda, which are the roll call. City Clerk.
Humby.
Here.
Okay. Gabriel.
Here.
Harrington.
Here.
O'Doherty.
Here.
Schmeckel.
Here.
Schuster.
Here.
Somerville.
Here.
Pierce.
Here.
And Weaver.
Here.
That is 9 present and 0 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. Appreciate it very much. All right, the next item will be the public comment on non-agenda items. I think we did have someone that had requested speaking earlier. Is that correct, City Clerk? Let's go ahead and on a non-agenda item, I believe. Yes. All right, Mr. Harris, Billy Harris, you're in the room. Go ahead.
Wonderful. Can you all hear me okay?
I can. You've got the floor.
Awesome. I just wanted to hop on and say, within the processes and the results of the working group for police and community, it's absolutely disheartening and unacceptable to see a lack of transparency and accountability from our counselors live on camera. Public meetings and public actions by council members should be clear. They should be unbiased. And they should be unswayed by hollow threats, specifically on hollow threats of police resignations. I'm just wondering, how can the public trust the city council as the provider of oversight for the police department when council members aren't communicating transparently and accountably? The acceptance of abstract threats is unacceptable. The lobbying of other council members in front of your constituents when a vote doesn't pass in your favor is unacceptable. You wouldn't have been robbing banks within the confines of the law with oversight, but you are robbing constituents of honesty and transparency and representation in front of our faces. Oversight isn't scary. Oversight wouldn't have been a cause for upheaval in the police department unless there are actions and practices conducted by officers that are known and covered concerns. This working group was in writing by law, going to be conducted in accordance of Wyoming statute. The influence of police members, of police culture, of police research, and apparently of police threats, I think has been strikingly affecting to the outputs of that working group. And I want to recommend that the measures voted on through unethical council proceedings be reconsidered and votes be recast, all with the influences of council members' decisions laid open and transparent to the public. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your public comments. Do you have any other public comments on non-agenda items? Yes. All right. Call on Tracy Rosalind. Welcome. You've got the floor.
Hello, thank you, Mayor and members of City Council. I wanted to
share a comment today on a non-agenda item. I was really dismayed to learn that members of City Council lobbied others and crafted language to support a vote change through a private channel during a live City Council meeting to change the outcome of a vote on whether to learn about oversight boards for our city. There was also expressed an urgent need to end the meeting instead of extending it or discussing the following week, which I find troubling because work had taken place in the ad hoc working group on this issue for over 6 months. Additionally, the fact that it took place while counselors called into question the word transparency in the recommendations provided should raise alarm bells for everyone on this council and all residents in this town. This was truly an unethical way to conduct the public's business and would smash any trust that the council provides meaningful oversight for the police department among the other types of oversight of all city business. I don't find it appropriate on any level for any member of council to intentionally influence other members of council to change a vote after it was completed via secret channels because the outcome was undesirable to them. And I hope something will be done to ensure this type of unethical behavior will not happen again, and whether there should be any ramifications for those involved. If there are not protocols in place to address such issues, I urge you to create some in order to prevent such conduct in the future and ensure that our representative democracy is preserved. I also second what Mr. Harris had to say. Thank you.
Thank you for taking your time to be here with us this evening, share your views. The next hand I had up was Deborah Hinkle. Welcome. You have the floor.
Forgot to unmute. Sorry, guys. I'm Deborah Hinkle. I'm the president of NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and I also am the coordinator for CIT for the police officers. So I don't have a particular problem necessarily with law enforcement. I worked with them a lot. I want to thank all of you for passing through the intention to work with making changes as far as we respond to people with mental illness. I think that's very important and I appreciate that. I also think it's important that you have a way to lodge a complaint that is anonymous. Throughout the years, I have heard people say they'd like to say something or talk about an incident and issue a complaint, but they're afraid of retaliation. And not that there necessarily would be, but they're still afraid of that. And so there needs to be a way for them to say, I don't think this was right, and not have any chance of that retaliation. On the other hand, I'm very disappointed in the way this meeting was handled and the vote was changed. And I think my previous two speakers, or the previous two speakers, addressed that very well. But I do think it's important that we revisit the possibility. No one wants to micromanage the police department. That would be ridiculous. But we also have to realize that anybody that works together, they form a friendship, a strong friendship. And a lot of times they want to protect each other. And so sometimes an outside person needs to also look at it, whether it's an oversight committee or whether it's some way to figure out a way to add to how use of force is investigated. I think that's incredibly important, and I think that's been made obvious in this community. I really hope you will rethink it. The oversight, the way you had that resolution worded, it didn't automatically create this oversight committee that was micromanaging the police department. It was to continue to work on it, and how it was handled was very disappointing. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you for taking time out of your evening to be here. share a point of view with us. Next hand I had was Linda Devine. Linda Devine, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I don't want to rehash what the previous speakers mentioned. That was my intent to talk a little bit about that. But I guess I'd like to focus and expand a little bit more on the fact that it didn't have to be an all or nothing oversight board. Ms. Hinkle just talked about a complaint process. That's something that we've all been asking for, I don't know how many years, until you just, you feel like you're just beating a dead horse into the ground. And the other issue too is like the bias incidents. That's something that could be included, whether it's an oversight board or whatever. People are not going to call police to report that they were called the N-word, or that somebody, made some disparaging remark to them because of their gender or sexual orientation. And I think what concerns me more than anything, and as I look at amongst y'all, is just the lack of diversity on this council. And it makes me wonder sometimes that if folks are truly getting what is out here, what is going on in the community. And going back to the lack of transparency, and for the most part, I've been pretty happy with the council member that replaced Stalder. Y'all had the opportunity though to put a person of color, a lesbian woman on there. Instead, you chose to pick another white man, put him on the council. So once again, we are lacking diversity. I mean, no disrespect to him, but if you don't understand it, if you're not in the middle of it, how can we trust that you are really going to make the changes that we are asking for? I go to and I see police videos. Maybe y'all should all go to some of the court hearings, see what goes on, see what these arrests are going on. It's just, and I'm starting to get too emotional now. It's just really frustrating to me that it was like for however many years you worked on it, and then boom, you decide not to on one vote because a recess was called and a member called another council member and came back, changed his vote, no explanation. And that, folks, is just, that's not transparency. I've always said, trust our leaders, trust the people we vote for. I'm losing trust. I really am losing trust in the city council. And quite frankly, I'm about ready to get people and start marching to the streets again, except everybody will probably get arrested. So anyhow, thank you for the opportunity to talk.
Thank you for taking time out of your evening to make some comments. General reminder to members of the public making comments would like to avoid personalities and keep it to generalities as much as possible. Next up, we've got Taylor Norton. Just let Taylor Norton into the room, and you've got the floor.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I'm pretty tired of being represented by a political body that actively works against the interests and desires of the electorate. And to find out that on top of that, votes that have already been cast are being changed via secret backdoor communications that are attempted to be kept from said electorate is really, really discouraging, frustrating, and frankly angering. This city council has repeatedly let down its constituency in regards to the particular matter that the previous commenters have been discussing, and it just goes on and on to show that the rules can be bent or changed or used effectively to stymie any actual meaningful accomplishments, and then can never seem to actually allow the things that the people want and the people voted for the majority of you to accomplish. Like it just never seems to work the other way. And I want to echo the frustration and the anger that people have been expressing. And not to belabor the point, but the stated reason, or at least a stated reason for voting down the resolution to continue investigating what it might look like to do a COB was something that someone mentioned was that, oh, the city council already does that. But then in the press, we've discovered that secretly the same individual seems to have made a decision based on the threat of how the police would behave. So how much oversight does the city council actually enact over the police department if the police department's actions dictate what the city council does? And that just further highlights why it's important for the community at large to be able to have some kind of oversight over the police. And if the police are truly worried about such a thing, then maybe they should be, because if they're doing everything right, they have nothing to worry about. The police work for the people. The people shouldn't be afraid of the police, and the people shouldn't be cautious that the police might be doing something untoward or uncouth or improper or violent behind closed doors that we'll never actually know about. We need to be able to have that level of transparency, openness, and it's this community deserves better.
Thank you for taking time out of your evening to make some comments. Again, let's try to keep those comments generalizable. Next up, we've got Marla Slater. Let's allow Marla Slater into the room, and you've got the floor.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Marla Slater. I don't know really the protocol, so I may need some guidance this way. I'm a lifelong citizen and resident, excuse me, of Laramie. I was born in 1973. Some of you may remember my parents, who were affiliated with the university starting in 1968. I am currently a proud mother of 2 boys who were raised here. And I am also, in my 3rd year of very intensive treatment for complex post-traumatic stress disorder and alcohol recovery, both of which have stemmed in part from a domestic violence and abuse experience that reflects on a marriage to a veteran LPD officer who is my ex-husband. I have, over the course of my lifetime, interacted and been exposed to law enforcement in this community in ways that probably most people haven't. My father killed himself from a self-inflicted gunshot wound when I was just 14 years old, and against a history which taught me to respect and have faith in our government officials and police officers. Clearly, that was a pretty traumatic experience in which I was leaning on them for safety and protection at a time when my family was not solvent. Stepping forward, and with no wish, frankly, especially out of respect for my 2 sons and their privacy and confidentiality, to get into any particulars. I am somebody that was raised on the campus of the University of Wyoming, whose mother was a dean, a department head, whose father was an active and vibrant member of the community and the English department. I have seen firsthand what it looks like to be married to a senior brass member of the Laramie Police Department, and to know what the nepotism and privilege, although I was quite young at the time, looks like, and the benefits that come with that relationship. To date, and not just as a reflection of that particular relationship, but of my experience in Laramie across my lifetime, some of the most controversial figures in law enforcement in this county, and by virtue of recent developments that have even reflected on things today, are my next of kin. are my extended family and the people that I turn to for safety still in the absence of my parents and close family. So I will say at first that I have never considered myself to be a victim. I am a survivor, but I am as conflicted in these questions of the town, the police, the relationships inside of those as anyone could possibly be, because I have suffered gravely as a result of domestic violence concerns inside a marriage that played out in a court system that was, in my mind, very, very defensively biased towards the status quo, the system, and law enforcement, and which simultaneously has built the foundation of my life in many ways. And all I'm going to say is that I do not speak out very openly anymore. I live in terror most days. I am fortunate for the privilege that has allowed me to access care that many people have not been able, although I am somebody that suffers gravely still for the economic consequences of that. All I can tell you is that if you are not operating in a spirit of transparency, then you are in fact endorsing a status quo in this community that is corrosive, that is sick, and that has every capacity to destroy the community that I was born in, have grown up in, have chosen to raise my children in and love in a way that really is quite shameful. Dale Stalder has been in my life since I was 7 years old. I don't want to name names, excuse me. I have known personnel who are significant and who are reputable and a part of this discussion on many, many different levels for the entirety of my lifetime. But as city council members, if you are not acting in transparency, then you are in fact undermining the solvency of this town, of this community, and of its functionality. And without going into advanced particulars and sociological arguments and debate, we are a nation that is dealing with profound trauma. Questions of intergenerational trauma are playing out across the board and becoming more relevant, not only academically, but just on a day-to-day basis. And if you are not acting in transparency, then I will tell you, as a former police wife, you are silencing me, you're silencing my hurt, you're silencing the hurt of women like me and potentially men. You are setting an example that endorses violence and abuse, however subtle, that will really destroy the fabric of a community. And I don't have the answers, and I certainly don't have the know-how to pick you apart on different like issues and politics. That's why I vote for you, but I have lost faith. And I would ask, albeit rhetorically, that as much as I strive to stay like openly aware of different news sources, that I would like an answer to the parties on this council that have been named in this whole incident of late, and an explanation as to what their experiences was and how they see it, because I think we deserve that. But otherwise, please don't tear us down. It's hard enough to have a voice in this day and age, and there are so many different complications. I am not somebody that wants to change Laramie. I'm not a diehard liberal. I am not somebody that hates cops. I never, ever will be. But I am somebody who was born and raised at the hospital here, who climbed Vitavoo in bare feet by the time I was 3, and whose father's remains are somewhere in the snowy range because that's where he chose to die. This land speaks to my heart and soul. I am not somebody that just moved in conveniently and claimed it here. I am speaking to you as somebody who knows this town, and I am asking you to honor it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for taking time to share your point of view with us.
Thank you.
I don't have any other hands raised for public comment. in our attendees, City Clerk? So I'm going to close the public comment period in just a moment. Public comment period's closed. And we'll move on with the agenda. The next item on the agenda is consideration of changes in the agenda and setting the agenda. Vice Mayor Pierce, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We have, I move that the following changes to the agenda be approved. We have 3 changes this evening to our agenda. The first change is that we have a new item on the consent agenda. It's item number 9M, and it was recently added to our agenda, and it's regarding a liquor license, and it's titled Temporary Use of County Liquor License for Cavalryman's Steakhouse. Our second change to the agenda is that we are canceling our executive session. We will just be moving to adjourn, and that is item number 17, if I remember correctly here. I didn't get it written down. Item number 17 on the agenda. Our third change this evening is that item 9L on the consent agenda is going to be moved to the regular agenda under item number 14A.
Second.
All right, that's a motion and a second. Council members, all those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. Any opposed, same sign. All right, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I move that the agenda be set as changed.
Second.
Motion and a second. Councilmember Schuster, thank you. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you all very much. All right. Now we will get to the next item, proclamations, public hearings, notifications. Proclamations and presentations is where I believe we have items this evening. We have a presentation from the Laramie Youth Council. It's a video from the chair and vice chair. So, City Clerk, I imagine you're going to have that queued up for us. Is that what we're going to do here? All right. Looking forward to this. Appreciate the Youth Council and their work.
I'm Anna Chen, and I was the chair for the Laramie Youth Council for the school year of 2021 to 2022.
My name is Sam Alexander, and I was the vice chair of Laramie Youth Council for the 2021-2022 school year.
And this year for Youth Council, we filled 14 of the 15 positions, and we had presentations during our meetings as well as projects. And so to start with the presentations that that describe the projects that were going on in Laramie. That includes the solar project currently happening, as well as information about the wastewater treatment plant, the natural resources, as well as information from the planning division and the solid waste division, as well as the fire department.
Learning about these projects that were going on in Laramie helped inspire us to create some projects of our own. We began in the fall by working on a vaccine hesitancy project where we partnered with our local vaccine incentive project and worked with them to help raise awareness of the vaccination benefits by distributing flyers and giving information to youth in our community about the benefits. After this, we adopted 2 major projects, being our food insecurity project and our mental health project. Our mental health project was intended to destigmatize mental health and help share mental health resources for the Laramie youth. One way we went about this was by working to create a mental health assessment to determine what those mental health needs among the Laramie youth are. We also engaged in our food insecurity project, where we worked alongside Laramie Interfaith, as well as our high school counselor, Mr. Eiderdike, who runs the high school food pantry, to help destigmatize food insecurity and help provide resources to our food pantry, as well as raise awareness with regard to the fact that we have a food pantry, what our food pantry does, how people can help it, and how we can work to get students involved in a way that can destigmatize food insecurity.
Additionally, during our meeting with Mr. Eiderdike, we were able to collect a list of food items that are the most needed, and so that we'd plan to give this out to the Laramie High School and the Laramie Middle School. So if there are any food drives that can help support this food pantry once we make it visible and known, those are the certain items that people can bring in to just help support this program. Additionally, we had our goals and objectives for this year, and it was mainly centered around mental health. We had 3 milestones, which included raising mental health awareness, destigmatizing mental health, as well as providing additional resources to those in Laramie's community that are our age or other youth.
So Youth Council has really just been an amazing and unique experience. I never would have expected as a high schooler to have the opportunity to work to solve real world problems such as mental health issues and food insecurity, especially working alongside local government like members of the city council. And it's truly been an invaluable experience, especially for someone like me who thinks that they might want to work with and study public policy one day.
Additionally, I was very excited to hear that Youth Council would continue this year after being on pause for a year due to COVID, because this experience, like Sam said, has truly been very rewarding. And to be able to get involved with these certain projects and be able to work with city council members to be able to make a positive impact about Laramie. And I've learned so much through all these projects that we've done, as well as the presentations from the lovely guest speakers that have been with us during our meetings. And so we both really like to thank everyone who was able to make Laramie Youth Council happen for this school year.
Well, definitely appreciate all the time and effort from those youth council members. That was a great way to do that presentation. Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to quickly acknowledge, though, City Clerk is not here this evening. I just wanted to quickly acknowledge her exceptional effort to keep the Youth Council on track this year. She was ever present and organized, as you all have come to expect. But I think she was particularly engaging for this group, and I just wanted to thank her. You know, she's not here, but you send it out to the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know we had a scheduling conflict, council members, which is why we did the video presentation. But that was fine. I think that was absolutely perfect. And of course, I think like so many things, if we didn't have the city clerk's office and our city clerk helping us with those things, they would not happen at all. And we appreciate it. City manager, are we at this point as the council, do we have everything in place for our next, how should we put it, cycle of youth council folks? And I ask you simply, perhaps the deputy city clerk knows, but I just want to make sure that we're on track with those things, because obviously that's something we want to keep going.
Thank you, Mayor. Ryan can add anything you'd like, but yes, we are currently accepting applications for next year's youth council.
Thank you very much. Anything, Assistant City Clerk, else to add? Anything you'd like to share about youth council? Have you been involved that much over the year?
I haven't really been too involved, but like city manager said, we have applications out now, and hopefully we'll start seeing some come in as the school year is starting to wrap up.
All right. Well, thank you both for that, and we look forward to it, and we appreciate it. And all those youth council members, you know, a lot of our youth council members, it probably doesn't come as a surprise to anybody on the council. A lot of those students are engaged with a lot of things. And those kinds of students, in my experience working with students, tend to keep piling things on. Sometimes it's not a great thing, but they do it anyway. But usually they're the kind of students that those are the things they want to do, and that's what they want to fill their time with. So to have them also have that willingness to add another item in there to those schedules, and to keep involved and working in a meaningful way with us is special, and we really appreciate it. Anna Chen, I think, has been involved with the Youth Council since its inception, as far as I know, and so that's really great to have a student work with us, a high school student worked with us that entire time through, and we really, really appreciate it. And just want to take note. Yes, Councilor Doherty, I saw you had a hand up. I just wanted to.
So Councilor Cumbie and Councilor Harrington and I were the liaisons this year, and it's really impressive. I think that that the students were so aware of how much anxiety students have today, and that it's just so real that they were trying to fix it. I don't think we waved the magic wand and fixed it, but just to destigmatize, to let people know that there are other people sharing in this pain and that you're not alone. And so trying to point students to resources, and also the food insecurity thing, worrying about their peers. So it's very heartwarming. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Doherty, and I appreciate you waiting. I just wanted to say a couple of things about Anna Chen, so thank you for waiting for me before I got to you. Go ahead, Councilor Cumbie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say what a good experience it was to work with the Youth Council, with Councilors Harrington and O'Doherty, as well as with our city clerk, who did an amazing job. And as Councilor O'Doherty was saying, I was just so impressed with the empathy and compassion that these students have for the youth in our community, and how they really wanted to fight stigma and were very non-judgmental about things. And I just thought it was a really impressive group and very heart-filling. So thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Cumbie and Councilmembers O'Doherty and Harrington, for your work with the Youth Council. I think it's just really one of our best little programs that we have here. And I'm really glad that former Councilmember Mayor Shumway spearheaded forming that a couple of years ago. I think it's been more than a couple of years ago now, probably 5, but it's a good program. Okay, well, I don't think we have any other presentations this evening, but we do have a public hearing. So I'm going to ask the city clerk to go ahead and give us the notice for the public hearing.
Okay. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing of the Laramie City Council will be held Tuesday, May 17th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom for the following purpose. Original ordinance number 2045, amending Laramie Municipal Code, section 10.36.020, related to the restrictions regarding the stopping, standing, or parking of vehicles, trailers, and recreational vehicles. All information relative to this matter is available for review at the City of Laramie City Clerk's office at 406 Ivinson Avenue, Laramie, Wyoming. Anyone wishing to be heard should be present or may be represented by his or her agent at the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you for the notice. All right, well, the public hearing is open. And I see that we have a hand in our attendees. Brett Glass, let's let Brett Glass into the meeting, and you have the floor for your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. What I wanted to say about this ordinance was simply that you really should consider the potential unintended consequences of the ordinance as written, perhaps make some modifications to it so that those don't happen. One of the, I'll go through some of the side effects that I've seen so far. I've also emailed you about this. The first problem is that it would prevent delivery drivers from doing some of their work. In particular, it would prohibit the DoorDash driver from dashing to your door. Because it prohibits them from double parking even for a second to run out with their delivery. This wouldn't just affect our local restaurants and their deliveries, but also UPS, FedEx, pretty much any delivery service. In some areas of our town, unfortunately, the sides of the street are parked solid for blocks. And this will greatly delay and impede the deliveries that we all need, especially as the COVID pandemic wears on longer than we want it to. So I would urge you to make some changes to make sure that this doesn't cause that untoward effect. A related problem that it would cause is that it would prohibit trucks from delivering supplies to restaurants in downtown. Right now, you very often see this. If you are downtown during the day, you've probably seen the delivery trucks. They don't have any other way to park, and they can't even really get down the alleys. So what they do is very often they will park in the middle of the street, and that's inconvenient. You have to worm your way around them. But it's the only way that they can conveniently deliver anything to the restaurants. And again, we don't want to impede that. We don't want to harm our businesses. So I think we really need to make some provision. Council should decide what it wants to do about this, what it wants them to do, and make sure that they're able to make those deliveries. On the other hand, we have another situation which crops up in downtown Laramie, which is a problem, which is if the trucks do pull down the alleys, they sometimes block them for hours, and or at least for an hour. And I've been in this situation where you had a truck blocking the alley, and the alley was a one-way alley, so you had to illegally drive the wrong way down an alley in order to get out in order to get out of a parking space that's in back of a downtown building. Certainly there should be a time limit on this. We shouldn't stop them from delivering, but nothing about this is mentioned anywhere in the ordinance. And then finally, there's the issue of the yellow zones. I took a casual stroll sometime last week and emailed to council some pictures of places where I thought that we would lose parking. And I have a couple of more. I don't know if the city clerk has them available, but I have a couple of more pictures from a stroll today where I found even more. And I'm wondering if it's possible for the city clerk to display those. City clerk, can you hear me? Are you there? Here is the corner of 2nd and Garfield. The 2nd is an arterial street, so this yellow zone is too small to fit the ordinance, and we'd have to eliminate parking there. Okay, next slide. Here we are at 2nd and Grand. Again, we have a yellow zone which is not anywhere near 20 feet. You can't see around the building anyway. That pillar is in the way. And yet the ordinance as written would eliminate parking there. Okay, next slide. Here we are at the corner of 4th and Grand. That yellow zone is far smaller, and well, you can't really see that well around the corner anyway because the 10 Commandments block your view, and we certainly don't want them to keep it. We certainly don't want to open the can of worms asking them not to display that. So this is also a concern where we would lose parking there, and this is a place where you frequently have funerals lining up. And other activities. If you have a wedding at the church, very frequently you'll have the happy couple coming out and getting into their vehicle right there. We'd be blocking off parking in that area. Okay, next slide. This is directly across the street from that at the former Boomerang building. Again, we'd be losing parking right there at the edge of downtown, and that's not a good thing. So again, even though the city staff has stated that we would not lose parking spaces in downtown, clearly that's not so. I think we need to do a serious survey and consider whether we really want to have a 20-foot limit. The state has a 20-foot limit in general, but we don't necessarily have to harmonize with that, as I understand it, and so we should seriously consider whether we do. And then finally, the last paragraph of the proposed ordinance allows the city staff, without any input from council, without any input from the traffic commission, from anybody in fact, to go ahead and impose restrictions, and there's no public hearing, no recourse, no public input. That's a very dangerous thing, and I definitely think that that paragraph should be deleted or modified so that the public can have some input and some recourse. So anyway, that's what I have to say to you tonight. I hope you'll consider these things as you go through the second and third readings of this ordinance, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments during the public hearing on this item about the proposed ordinance changes? Coming up as an item for discussion this evening. So it will be another chance to make comments. Council, city clerk, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing on this item. Let's move now to announcements. City manager.
Hello, Council. Good evening. Our first of three announcements this evening is to recognize our staff member of the month here at the City of Laramie. Adjust my camera a little bit. We are very happy to tell you that Mike Shingleton is our employee of the month, who has been nominated by two of his coworkers, our recreation manager and our recreation administrative coordinator, the two of them nominating Mike, saying that he comes to work, works tirelessly, has a great attitude, and just is a pleasure to work alongside. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Mike. He is a senior facilities maintenance worker. Right now, he is focused at the Recreation Center, and he is working our evening shift. Mike started with the city in July of 2006, so he has a long history with us, and wanted to share with members of staff how much he enjoys working in the facilities maintenance section, but largely because they don't just do custodial work the way many people think of them. They also have many challenging tasks that require a lot of mechanical issues and maintenance. Mike says he prefers to be proactive versus reactive, and to keep things well maintained rather than having to repair them when they fall apart. And so, boy, we sure do appreciate that, don't we, as coworkers and as elected officials and city staff and as taxpayers. Mike is a certified ICE technician. Interesting point about that is this is required for his job, and certified ICE technicians are required in any National Hockey League facility, but also in our own recreation center. He's also a certified pool operator, which is required for his position, and then he also has his pesticide certification. All of those three certifications required for the job and having to be re-upped every few years or so. Mike's originally from Laramie. He's worked for a couple of our other large employers in the community before joining our team in 2006, and we're super thrilled to have him here, and we want to recognize his great work and his great camaraderie and dedication to the public. I will tell you, Mike is not with us tonight, although he may be watching, but he was feeling a little camera shy, as many of our staff do. They do great work every day and don't like to necessarily be on camera and recognized for it. They just kind of like to fly under the radar. So thanks to Mike, but he won't be able to join us tonight. And thank you for the opportunity to acknowledge his great work.
Thank you, City Manager. What do we always say? We like these little spotlights for staff people that we might not otherwise encounter. I read the little preview for this in our newsletter when I picked up the last one, and it was nice to read about that. And that's another way to get a little bit of information about these folks. And it's just cool, and I hope we do it always and forever. And so we appreciate Mr. Shingleton's work and to hear a little bit more about him. Thank you, City Manager. All right, let's keep it going, folks. So next we've got a little bit of a what will be a recurring announcement, which I'd like to ask our city clerk to just give us a quick update on or review of.
Okay, Council. I just wanted to point out again that we are this year and moving forward, you're going to have to present IDs at the polls when you go to vote. Any of the listed stuff on this flyer is valid. So just wanted to point that out again. And then the second thing I wanted to share was that the filing period still is going until May 27th. And so there's still time for the members who want to run for city council to apply.
Thank you, City Clerk. 10 days and counting, closer to 9 now. But plenty of time to get in there and file for city council, or if you're interested in the other offices, you go to the county clerk's office. As a matter of fact, I think you go to the county clerk's office for all of these, but if you run for city council, you have to make 2 stops. Isn't that right, City Clerk? You need to file at the city hall for city council, but you also need to go to the county clerk's office. Is that right?
Just to make sure you're registered in and your address is all up to date and everything like that.
All right.
And get
Which
any
hopefully
prints.
Yeah. Thank you, City Clerk. I was just going to say, which hopefully is the case if you're running for City Council. That would be good. And then new wards, and I imagine that information is available at both of those locations as well. Well, thank you for that. Okay, so that takes us to item number 7, which is disclosures by City Council members, and that is if there are any disclosures about any of the items coming before the City Council tonight that any City Council members would like to make, now is the time. Seeing none, we will move on. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I move that the consent agenda be approved and that each specific action on the consent agenda be approved as indicated.
Second.
All right, it's a motion and a second by Councilmember Somerville, and I would just like to quickly state that we have made a modification to the consent agenda to approve and allow for the catering permit for a liquor license holder for Vice Mayor. I can't recall the details. Do you?
So it's a temporary license to be used by the Calverman's House for one event only within the city limits.
Right, and I think that was a wedding where they wanted to have that.
I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. So anyway, it's a routine item, but we did need to add it at the last minute, and we just wanted to make sure that it was mentioned. Folks can do that with their liquor license, but they have to get a couple of permits. And since there was going to be a delay in the meeting times, we wanted to make sure that we had that approved for them. We're happy to do that for them, and hope the event goes well. All right. So there's been a motion and a second and a little bit of unprompted discussion on the consent agenda. Thank you very much. And all those, wait a second. Actually, City Clerk, we need a roll call vote.
Cumbie,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster, Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
and Weaver.
Yes.
That is 9 yeses, 0 no, and 0 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, Council and City Clerk. That motion carries. The consent agenda has been approved. So that takes us to item number 10, the opening of the regular agenda, and to item number 11, Vice Mayor Pierce.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I move to approve amendment number 2 to the citywide storm drainage master study professional services agreement with Wood Environmental and Infrastructure Solutions to develop storm water regulations and a design manual in the amount of $247,645 plus a contingency of $80,000 for a total amendment amount not to exceed $354,645 and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign.
I'm sorry, I missed the second.
Second.
Oh, thank you very much. Second motion and a second by Councilman Cumbie, and I see that we have the city engineer here to provide some background. So why don't you go ahead, sir?
Your Honorable Mayor, members of council, the amendment before you tonight is for our city, to our citywide drainage master study, and it is noted it was to develop regulations and a design manual for stormwater. These regulations are critical for the city to address our future needs, and Wood will work with city staff and other stakeholders to develop these guidelines that will apply to both private development and public improvement projects. I do want to note that we will look into the option of low impact development and green infrastructure also as we go through this process. And with that, staff supports the approval of this amendment, and I can answer any questions you may have on this item.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Mr. John? City engineer, I have kind of a general question, but I bet it's one that you'll be able to address. I know that as new developments come on and into the city, and as the city grows, that stuff of course impacts the kind of drainage issues that we have to deal with. I think I guess, and this was what I'd like you to answer, is that when the design and the implementation of drainage systems that exist for things in the community now were put in place 20, 30, 40 years ago, going back to whenever developments came online. I think it's natural to say that folks weren't necessarily able to predict the kind of weather patterns that we look at now today. And I think it's safe to say that those just a little bit. And I just wonder if some of that's had an impact on how our drainage at different points across the city has worked. Because, and I bring that up because I think I've noticed that too. You know, we get different weather at different times of year than we used to. And I wonder if that has been a challenge that we've struggled with drainage, stormwater drainage around the city. If you want to touch on that at all, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah, Your Honorable Mayor. So as we've been doing these studies over the years, we have looked at rainfall, and a lot of the rainfall that kind of comes up is statistically based. So it's a chance of the storm occurring. As we move into this, we'll take a second look at that as well and kind of put that criteria back into this manual. And so that will be looked at as part of this work.
Thank you. I appreciate you touching on that topic. It just seems that we're getting rain and we're getting more of it, or snow and more of it at different times of the year than we used to. And I just don't really know what kind of impact that has, but it'll be interesting to hear more about that. Councilmember O'Doherty's got a question. Councilmember O'Doherty.
Thank you. I thought the title of this one part, the good housekeeping in municipal operations on page 5, it's number F. Does this just pertain to storm runoff? So it's just about the water getting there, and the good housekeeping refers to keeping the channels clear of debris. Because it talks about compile a list of city operations and infrastructure that would fall under these requirements, and figure out the level of activities already being completed. So there's talk about vehicles, but I assume they're all vehicles, just the things related to storm drainage, or is it all vehicles?
This is just going to be, Your Honorable Mayor, through you, this is just in relation to stormwater is what this will be looking at.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Doherty. Thank you, City Engineer. Any other questions on this topic? You know, stormwater drainage isn't something we think about until we have a problem with it, and then someone's calling City Hall and emailing us. But it's good to see the ongoing work. I really shouldn't say that it is something that many members of our staff think about all the time. That's more of a reference to the council members than anything else. So it's good to get these updates, and we'll look forward to the rest of the information when we get it, City Engineer. Let's see if there's any public comment on the item. Seeing none, we'll close that public comment period. We'll go back to council, give you a last shot for any questions or comments. City Clerk, let's have a roll call vote on it.
Somerville,
Yes.
Schuster, Schmeckel,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Cumby,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
and Weaver.
Yes.
That is 9 yeses and 0 no, Your Honor.
Thank you, Clerk. Thank you, Council. That motion carries, and that brings us to item number 12, which is going to be for Councilmember Gabriel.
Thanks, Mayor. I would move to approve on second reading original ordinance number 2045, amending LMC section 10.36.020 related to the restrictions regarding the stopping, standing, or parking of vehicles, trailers, and recreational vehicles.
Second.
Motion and a second by Councilmember Schmeckel by just a nanosecond, I think. All right. Well, I think we have returned to the plate from the City Engineer. City Engineer, go ahead.
All right, Your Honorable Mayor and members of council, tonight is a second reading regarding this parking ordinance. This ordinance is being brought forward because of concerns from both the public and city council. As was noted last time, our Traffic Safety Commission does recommend this ordinance and supports the proposed changes. In addition, WIDOT also supports the following changes. We do have two amendments tonight. The first is to address the wording regarding highway tunnels. This was kind of noted at our last meeting, and the amendment will correct the language to align with the current state statute. And then the second change is adding as determined by the city engineer to the end of section 102620 A2G. And this will match other language that we have in the ordinance and was added to kind of give staff the flexibility to adjust that parking if needed. The example I'd like to kind of note for this, say if we encountered a situation that only removing 18 feet of parking versus 20 would end up keeping a parking space. Staff would basically look at this, assess it based on our standards, and probably end up removing only that 18 feet to try to keep that additional parking space. And so that's the reason why we ended up recommending that amendment with that. Upon adoption, Public Works would begin the curb marking this summer, starting in our arterials and crosswalks, and then we would move on to collectors. And we anticipate this work being completed by August of 23. With that, I can answer any questions you may have regarding this item.
Questions? Yes, Councilmember O'Doherty.
For the public's benefit, can you describe what an arterial versus a collector? Give some examples. Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember O'Doherty, through you, Mayor. So as engineers and as the city, we kind of classify roads different ways. Arterial roads are going to be your main travel roads that you have around Laramie. You know, a good example of this is going to be Grand Avenue. We have major and minor arterial roads, but major being the higher traffic, but you're trying to get the majority of your traffic to funnel onto those roads. Collector roads are what you're going to see, say like on 9th Street. And it's kind of in between our local roads, which is the lowest classification, but the collector roads are going to essentially collect that traffic to kind of funnel that to those arterial roads, also to collect traffic from the local roads. The local roads, which we also designate are more your neighborhood roads where you're seeing that lower traffic volumes.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. City engineer, we talked 2 weeks ago, I think it was, whenever we had the first reading. I had asked a question about downtown parking, and since it was brought up again, I'm just curious if you can reiterate. Last time, I want to make sure that this is still true under the ordinance as written. Last time I had asked if it would remove parking downtown and was told it would remove one space downtown, and I just want to confirm that with you this evening.
Yes, Council Harrington, through you, Mayor. So staff went out and evaluated those areas, and that's kind of part of what this amendment is for. Our intent was if an area down there was only removing, say, within a foot or two, or within that area of not removing parking, we were going to keep that parking space. This is mostly applied to like the diagonal spaces that we have. You know, we don't want to remove a couple feet. If it's just removing an additional couple feet, we want to keep that diagonal space in the downtown area. If it's a parallel space, we would probably encroach a little bit on some of those parallel spaces, but the entire parking space, and we would make sure that there is still enough space in that to be able to fit a car. As staff did evaluate this, we did look at just like the core of the downtown, say along 2nd Street where that major road is kind of what we evaluated. We didn't expand a whole lot more, but in that main corridor area, we did only identify one space.
Okay, no follow up. All right, thank you. Other questions about this? Wonder if we could address, oh, I've got a couple of hands coming up. I'll go to the Vice Mayor.
Yeah, Mayor, if you want, I'm ready to put an amendment on the floor. So when you're ready for that, I can do it, or perhaps somebody else wants to jump in and do it, but I've got it up and ready to go, just so you know.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. No, I'm going to call on you in just a second. I did see the city manager. It popped up for recognition. City manager, did you want to speak?
Mayor, I just wanted to offer some response to the public concern and the public comment regarding the delivery drivers.
Please,
the
that's what I was.
restriction of double parking, so to speak, for delivery. I did talk with the chief about this, and I believe he was prepared to talk about our experience in Laramie and the fact that we do not cite typically for these things, recognizing that, you know, that's the only way, frankly, for many parts of town to deliver product to businesses and such. So I don't know if the chief's on here. Let me see. But if he is, he's welcome to jump in.
City manager, while we're waiting to see there, it does strike me that that is not dissimilar to lots of downtowns throughout the state that I've been able to visit. I think that's the case with a lot of those, and I understand this is, of course, a state statute issue, but I would venture a guess that lots of cities and towns in Wyoming have to deal with the same kind of discretionary application of this, so that businesses in downtowns and places that maybe have older street designs can accommodate that. And to my knowledge, it hasn't been problematic, but
Mayor, I think that's correct. And I don't see the chief here, but I will tell you that I did correspond with him earlier today. And it's a historical downtown or an aged downtown kind of issue, and we have no intention to interfere with that delivery of products.
Okay, well, that's good to know. And frankly, I think we'd have a flood of complaints if we started trying to crack down on folks delivering to the restaurants and some of the grocery places and things like that that are downtown. It just wouldn't be practical. I want everybody to sit down while I say this. There are some ordinances that are applied on a discretionary basis for practical reasons out there in the world, and in this case and in that area, I think we can all understand why that might be the case. Vice Mayor, I understand you have an amendment.
Yeah, I'm going to start with our first recommended amendment. It's I move to amend section 10.36.020, capital A, number 1, lowercase g, to read as follows: upon any bridge or other elevated structure upon a highway or within a highway tunnel.
Second.
The motion is second from Councilmember O'Doherty. Discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, I do believe the city engineer has outlined a little bit for us why that amendment was offered. Makes sense. Why don't we see if there's public comment on the amendment? Council. Public comment for the amendment is open. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period. Council members, any further questions or comments? City engineer, anything else you want to add to this that you didn't address for us before? All right, let's have a roll call vote on the amendment.
Harrington?
Yes.
Gabriel?
Yes.
Cumby?
Yes.
O'Doherty?
Yes.
Schmeckel?
Yes.
Somerville?
Yes.
Schuster? Pierce?
Yes.
And Weaver?
Yes.
That is 9 yeses and 0 no, Your Honor.
Okay, the motion for the amendment carries. Thank you, Council and City Clerk. Vice Mayor Pierce, I understand you have a second amendment.
I do. It's recommended amendment number 2. I move to amend section 10.26.020, capital A, number 2, lowercase g, to read as follows: within a minimum of 20 feet at any intersection of an arterial or collector street as designated in the major street plan, the curb marking parking restriction should begin a minimum of 20 feet from the abutting sidewalk extension or curb radius, whichever is greater or determined by the city engineer.
Second.
There's a motion and a second from Councilmember Brill. Thank you very much. Discussion on this. I do think this gets to the heart of some of those concerns about those particular areas and where the, what do we call the paint? I'm having a moment here. The striping seems to be a little bit incongruent with what we're trying to do. Don't see any questions or further comments, so why don't we actually, City Engineer, can I ask you just a little bit of a question? What would the sort of operational procedure for this be when your office makes these assessments? Just go take the measurements and see how things have to be adjusted. Can you talk just a little bit about that?
Yeah, Your Honor, Mayor. So this is going to kind of apply to all the city where we're looking at putting this in, not just the downtown area. I'll collect in arterials. So we've only done high level assessment at this point in time for this. So we're going to go out and see what's going on at the individual intersections and work with our street department. If we find an area that, say, as I was kind of noting earlier, that has like a diagonal parking spot, and we can end up keeping that parking or an item such as that by just reducing it. We'll go out, kind of assess to make sure that it's not going to cause any other complications or any other issues, and make that assessment in the field based on the on-site conditions.
I appreciate that. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wondered if the clerk or the motion maker could clarify the section reference. I thought I heard section 10.26. And I may be wrong, but I believe if it was stated as 10.26, it was meant to be 10.36.
Janine, in the cover sheet, it was 10.26, but we can certainly change that to 10.36.
All right.
I'll second the change if that's necessary.
I think procedurally it is. Thank you, Councilmember Doherty. Okay, so we've made the technical change to the amendment language. Those things happen. City Manager, anything else there?
No, thank you, Mayor.
You bet. No, thank you. And thank you, City Engineer, for kind of giving us the practical way this is going to play out. Why don't we see if there's public comment? Yes, we've got Brett Glass. Let's let Brett Glass, Mr. Glass, into the meeting and give him a chance for public comment. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I think it's good that there might be some discussion exercise. The only problem that I see here is that some of the yellow zones that I photographed and showed earlier during the public hearing are less than 10 feet long. And so how much discretion do we allow? I'm really hoping that perhaps we could reduce the number, the distance from 20 to something smaller, so that it doesn't seem as if the engineer is completely overriding the ordinance, but rather is exercising some moderate discretion. In any case, I would welcome any opportunity to save parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glass, and for taking time to be at the meeting to share your views on the topic. Let's go to anybody else that wants to make a comment about the amendment. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment on the amendment and back to council and staff. City Manager, you still have your hand raised, but I don't know if that was from before. Okay, so you're good. All right, just checking. And council, any further discussion or comment? City Engineer, just to, I guess I have a little bit of a follow-up question on some of those concerns that have been expressed. Again, I think what I heard you say in your answer to us just a few minutes ago on this topic is that right now there's sort of been a generalized view about how to apply this, and then sort of the more technical application of this will occur as all those intersections across the city are assessed. Some streets and neighborhoods, as we know, usually those that are newer, tend to be more uniform than the older streets and street plans and designs, and it's probably those that are going to require the better part of discretion and analysis for how to make these changes. But I don't know if you want to touch on that again or address any of those points. I don't think it's so much that it's going to be every intersection is going to have a special rule. It's just that there are some areas of our community where that's probably more likely than not. I don't know if you want to touch on that, City Engineer, but I'll give you a chance, and then I'll go to the other hands up here.
Yeah, Your Honorable Mayor, I don't know obviously what all the changes, but you are correct, and we're probably going to see that more in the older parts of town, more probably as we've kind of noted in the downtown areas we've already kind of talked about. You know, a lot of these areas too, we already have quite a bit of the parking removed. It's only actually removing a few feet. That's obviously not all across the town, but you know, as we've been kind of driving around, and we haven't gotten the tape measure out, but as you kind of just do drive-bys and stuff, it's actually kind of surprising. It's only adding just a few feet here and there on some intersections, and then other intersections it will be the full 20 feet will be removing. But we'll just kind of have to go out and assess that as it comes along, and work closely with our street department if issues come up to address the situation.
Thank you. And am I correct in also adding to that individuals that are living on streets where, or maybe right on the corner lots where these things may arise, they certainly have an opportunity to work with your office, Traffic Safety Commission, and the Streets Department to try to come up with a solution if one is needed, based on what we're going to do in terms of parking at those intersections. My understanding is those channels are available, and certainly people can do that and should feel welcome to do that. Isn't that the case?
That is correct.
All right, thank you very much. I've got the Vice Mayor first, and then Councilmember O'Doherty. I think I've got that order right. If I don't, I apologize. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is basically just for the public's edification. City staff put together a really nice map that's included in this packet. And if they have any questions or want to get a kind of a visual idea of what the plan is, taking a look at that map and kind of where they put the yellow, it was really a great thing for me to look at and kind of review, to kind of wrap my head around what we're doing and basically why we're doing this. So, and from my perspective, it's about access. It's allowing those cars that are coming from neighborhoods basically to hop on that collector or that arterial and have a little more room to see and to access those roads and get in within the traffic flow. So I think this is a good plan, and I'm very supportive of it.
I appreciate you pointing that out, Vice Mayor. And that probably the easiest way to find that would be through the Agenda Center link for this item for this day's meeting. But if you're having any trouble finding that, I know you can call the City Clerk's office, and they'd be happy to help you access that map as well, so you can take a look at it and get a feel for what the Vice Mayor is talking about. I appreciate you bringing that up. Councilmember O'Doherty.
It occurs to me when we were looking at the photos that Mr. Glass provided that intersections where there's a light, I don't have to keep inching out to see when I can go. I can wait for the light to turn green and then look and go. I'm mostly concerned about those intersections, especially the ones onto 9th, where you're just taking your life in your hands every time you try to get on that street. That's been one of my main concerns. And as somebody who drives a sedan, it's pretty obvious to me that we need to make some changes. So I support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Doherty. Councilmember Gabriel, can I ask you a little bit of a question here? And it's a little bit for fun, but it's a little bit for the subject at hand. And I think one of the things that brought this to your attention this most recent time around, and why we're taking a look at this, is that I think from your perspective, there's a bicycle safety issue here as well. And my understanding is, of course, you do a lot of biking around the community, going to and from, and that was one of the things that helped initiate this. And we're hoping that this will have some impact on that as well. I don't know if you want to touch on that at all, but
No, you bet. Thanks, Mayor. Excellent point. And I go back to when I talked to the city manager about this one trailer that was parked, and I called city dispatch, and they came out and looked at it and said, we can't do anything. They're legally parked. And it was right on the corner where you couldn't see. And it was just one of those things that a safety issue that needed to be addressed. And I know we have many of those. 13th and Spring Creek is a prime example. We saw that in the recent newspaper. And so just the safety issues, the vice mayor has pointed out that we really need to get a handle on this. And I'm very appreciative of what the city staff has done to prepare for council for all of these discussions.
Thank you, Councilmember Gabriel. I did just want you to weigh in a little bit on this because I know you've been driving this a little bit, but it's something I think we can all share a similar point of view on, I believe. Councilmember Schuster, go ahead.
Safely, because I agree with Councilor O'Doherty that there are sometimes you're inching out to try to see around something that's parked terribly on the corner. When I went down Downey heading to work, there's a person there on Downey in front of some townhouses that parks on the corner. They're not either direction. They actually block the handicap section going onto the street. So I'm hoping that if we pass this, that it's enforced. Because that's one of the biggest things. I've watched us pass junk ordinance, trash ordinances, everything else, junk car ordinance, but yet there's several areas of the town that I can probably go find 50 unlicensed vehicles on the street. So I hope if we do this, we can actually enforce this. That's one of my biggest concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Schuster. And I do feel compelled to add, some of that's just simply an issue of our capacity as a city and a city staff. There's a lot of intersections in the city of Laramie, and there's a lot for folks to do. Hopefully, if this passes, most people would find it pretty bold to park in the yellow. That's a pretty good way to get a ticket pretty fast on just about any day of the week in the city of Laramie. Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to tag on to what you said, and the capacity is certainly an issue. And I just, I think this ordinance is a step in the right direction. But I just want to share with the council, as I sat working remotely from my office this afternoon, and I watched the city of Laramie ATV come around, and they painted the curb kind of catty corner across from my house for the fire hydrant. And it really just struck me that economy of scale, that, coordination whatever we can do to support city staff, so that when we are deploying resources, we're checking all of those areas and doing what we can when we send one out. I think that's probably going to be the way forward. But I appreciate what you said. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Somerville. I don't think Councilmember Schuster meant to be critical. It's just an issue of how we can deal with these things. Hopefully this will be a step in the right direction, just like some of the other changes we've made along the road here have been an effort. We have some unmarked intersections as well, and hopefully this is something that might help with some of those concerns if it's merited. Any other discussion? Council members? All right. City Clerk, can we have a roll call vote on the amendment?
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Cumby,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
and Weaver.
Yes.
That is 9 yeses and 0 no.
Okay, so that amendment has passed. Thank you, City Clerk and Council. So we're on the main motion now. And we'll see if there's any further discussion on the main motion, although I think we probably addressed it in the discussion on the amendments. I want to give everybody an opportunity. Anything further? See if there's public comment on the main motion as amended before we take the roll call vote, okay? Seeing none, we'll close that. Council, let's go to our roll call vote, City Clerk.
Okay. Cumby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
and Weaver.
And yes.
That is 9 yeses and 0 no, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk and Council. That motion carries. All right. That takes us to item number 13, Councilmember O'Doherty.
All right.
Oh,
I
there you
move that Laramie City Council approve original ordinance number 2041, amending Laramie Municipal Code, Chapter 10.32, bicycles to update language to reflect current device uses on second reading.
Second.
A motion and a second from Councilmember Schuster. All right. Who's here for background? Agenda. Looks like we've got Mr. Fieser. Assistant City Manager. There he is. Welcome.
Sorry about that, Mayor.
It's okay.
I actually lost track of where we were at. Can you help me back out on the agenda?
Yeah, no problem. We're at item 13 for the changes to code for the bicycle alternative transportation stuff, and no problem happens to me all the time, Assistant City Manager. Don't worry about it. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Honorable Mayor, City Council, again, we're asking for postponement just due to workload. I've been working just in the past week. I was able to finally spend an hour with Laramie BikeNet to go over their recommended changes and to get back in front of the Traffic Safety Commission before I bring it back to council for final reading. And it's strictly a workload process on my own. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
You bet. And I want to emphasize that the council has complete understanding for that. You know, we want to incorporate the feedback that we get from folks that are active in the community, like the BikeNet, work through the channels like the Traffic Safety Commission. And certainly we all recognize it's not the only thing that the city staff and the city council are working on right now, Assistant City Manager. So, you know, we definitely understand. Any discussion on the postponement?
Can I move?
Yes, please, Councilor O'Doherty. Yeah.
I move to postpone the second reading of original ordinance number 2041 to July 19th, 2022.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Well, I suppose we better stop and see if we have public comment on the postponement motion. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public comment period. Council members, anything else? Anything further on this one? Like I said, I think we all understand. We'll get to it. All right. Why don't we have a roll call vote, City Clerk?
Okay. O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Cumby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
and Weaver.
Yes.
Okay, that is 9 yeses and 0 no, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk and Council. That motion carries. And we will pick that item up here shortly. All right, that takes us to item number 14, Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the Laramie City Council approve Resolution 2022-31, adopting an income threshold for the application of needs-based discounts for the Laramie Community Recreation Center memberships and recreation activities, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
It's a motion and a second from the vice mayor. And we have, yes, Councilmember Somerville.
Mayor, I didn't know if you wanted an introduction or you want me to go ahead with the motion for postponement.
Yeah, I think we'll just get a brief one and with just a little bit of the background. Then I'll go back to you for the motion. And I don't know, is this Assistant City Manager Feeser as well? I can't believe so. Yes.
Yep. Honorable Mayor, City Council, what you have before you is a needs-based discount that this is the first time in Laramie's history that it would be applied to memberships at the Recreation Center. What staff had proposed was a 30% needs-based discount based on 200% of the federal poverty level. Based on questions today that we have, we want a chance to look at our recommendation one more time before we bring it to council and work with some of the questions that we have ahead of us. And we're asking for postponement to the next scheduled council meeting.
Thank you very much. Some more information to be gathered there. Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move to postpone this item until the June 7th, 2022 regular city council meeting.
Second.
Motion and a second by the vice mayor, just barely, I believe. Assistant City Manager, I guess the only question I'd ask is, do we feel pretty confident that we'll be able to get all that information that we need for that June 7th meeting at this point?
Yeah, the Honorable Mayor, through you, I do believe that we'll be able to get through it and maybe bring something for at least discussion for council to have.
All right, and I think we're only at the second reading of the item. Is that correct, Council?
The Honorable Mayor, it's a resolution, just one reading.
So it's a resolution for one reading. Okay. Well then, let's see if there's any public comment on the postponement motion. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period. And council members will go to the city clerk for our roll call vote.
Harrington,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Cumby,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
and Weaver.
Yes.
That is 9 yeses and 0 no, Your Honor.
Okay, that motion carries. Pick that item up as well. All right, that takes us to item number 14A for Councilmember Schuster. Councilmember Schuster, you've probably already seen it, but there's some recommended language from the city clerk.
Thank you. I move that the city council approve the schedule of meetings as documented.
Second.
So motion and a second from Councilmember Somerville. All right, Councilmember Schuster, go ahead.
Thank you. This is off of our 5th Tuesday open meetings to the public. I would like to see those start up again. I don't feel we need to have them outside, so I'm just requesting that we be able to have our meeting at the fire station on Reynolds as we normally do. People that show up can discuss any part of the city that they would like to, and that's just a request I'm making.
Okay, discussion, further discussion. I guess I would just, yes, Councilmember Gabriel.
During our pre-session, I brought this up for discussion since we hadn't had anything scheduled. And so I thought I'd bring it up. We've always had these in the past until COVID hit, of course, and we've postponed it. And we've had, as you've mentioned, a limited participation in these meetings, but I think it's probably a good idea. And Councilor Schuster and O'Doherty and I have always met over at the fire station. And so I think it'd probably be a good idea to just kind of see what kind of input we would have from residents once we started this up again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gabriel. I'd add that those of us that have had the Zoom versions of these, we've had 1 or 2 or 3 people show up at them. And we've continued those as well. Councilmember Harrington.
Thanks, Mayor. 2 thoughts. The first one, I guess, is a general question I would have for council. Would we be meeting with council members who are elected in no longer existing wards, in sort of like would we be using old wards or new wards? And then how would that shake out as far as, you know, I know Ward 1 now has more than 3 council members, if I'm thinking correctly off the top of my head. How are we going to define that part would be my first question. And then my other question is, well, I'm going to just call it what it is. This is just a comment. I have had no issue in keeping in touch with residents. There are a few who prefer the in-person meeting. I've had 1 husband and wife that show up often that have requested these, but when I've told them they can call me anytime, they certainly do. I have had no issue staying in touch with folks, and it occupies more of my own time because then I'm taking a series of phone calls instead of 1 hour-and-a-half meeting. But I have found that constituents seem to be pretty happy with that, or at least okay with it. So I don't know that we need to have these meetings. I do think we need to find some way to engage the public. But if only 5 members of the public are showing up, I'm not sure we're engaging the public. So I'm just not sure it's an effective method to achieve the goals of the council. But I do share the other council members' interest in finding a way to engage the public.
Thank you, Councilmember Harrington. Councilmember Cumby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say, in the time that I've been on council, I've had much more robust interactions individually with constituents. They seem to feel free to email or to call, and I seem to get more information from them that way than I've ever obtained from one of the meetings. So.
Thank you, Councilmember Cumby. Other discussion? I'd like to share my perspective on this. One thing that I've noticed that's curious at several of these over the last, I'd say 6 years. One thing that kind of struck me at these meetings is you'd have people show up and say, well, we came to see what you wanted to talk to us about. And we would then say, well, that's why we're here. And it would sort of just kind of turn into a free-ranging conversation. There's just nothing wrong with it. And then at other times we've used them because we did have a specific topic that we wanted to discuss. And we would spend, some of the time talking to 3 or 4 people in attendance about the specific topic. And that could be helpful. But what we would all note, including the people in attendance, is the small number of people there and whether or not that was actually, reflective of people's views. I wonder, since there are some people that have a preference for these and those of us that aren't as interested in continuing, and if we might just turn this into something that we option. If folks want to do it, then okay, this ward's going to have a ward session at this place, and go ahead. And I like the idea of making it option, because perhaps other wards that don't have the regular attendance or don't have the regular interest in this from their constituencies, if you retain it as an option, if something does come up and you and your ward, you say, you know what, this sounds like something we had a ward meeting about, and there's a specific issue or a specific set of topics to drive the discussion, maybe that'll get people there. Just a thought. And I'd also add, this is such a funny discussion for me because I remember pushing really hard on this. Councilmember Somerville's laughing at me, Vice Mayor Pierce might remember. In 2012 and 2013, I thought this was a great idea. We needed to do this. And I had a former council member, actually a couple of them, say, yeah, we've done this before and here's what happens. And boy, that's exactly what happened. On the other hand, I understand the idea behind it. It's funny for me because I'm no longer as enthusiastic, nor do I find it as useful as I thought I would 10 years ago. Got a couple of hands up. I don't know what order. I think it's Councilmember Schuster, so I'm going to go to him, and then I'll go to Vice Mayor and Councilmember Schuster. Go ahead.
Since we brought this item up, I'm just asking, should I ask for an amendment for that, and then the whole council gets to vote on it? So that would be a question I have, and then you can go the other two, and then people can make a suggestion, because I don't know the way I introduced it, if I did it legally at all or not.
I think you introduced it for conversation, since this was sort of a conversation item, Councilmember Schuster. I think that's okay, but I also think you're right, and the city clerk nodded that probably the amendment for that. But council, with your approval, I think we'll go ahead and get the substance discussion out of the way, since we've already started quite a bit down that road, finish that up, and then when we get to the amendment, we can do the votes. Is that okay with everybody? All right. Vice Mayor Pierce.
Yeah, Mayor, I think from my personal perspective, I'm not exactly sure what the right approach is. All I know is that the ward meetings have, in my opinion, to some extent failed, right? I mean, I think it was a good effort in the beginning. I think we had some pretty good turnout, and maybe the recent turnout is partly due to COVID, maybe not, I don't know. But no matter how this turns out, I think I'd like to make a commitment to council members and to the public, that we will come up with something else to work on that engagement piece. We've got surveys being planned, we've got other activities going on, and I think maybe this would potentially warrant a work session at some point to really hash out some ideas related to that public engagement. So if this passes or not, just know that this isn't the end. If that makes sense, we will still try to come up with some good plans to engage the public, or at least that would be my hope, that we do that.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember O'Doherty.
I think it would be a good opportunity to talk about the Laramie Area Growth Plan, and maybe we could even put that in the announcement that the council is considering the joint growth area management plan, and that councilors, some councilors will be sitting around some fire stations. Thanks.
All right, Councilmember O'Doherty. Councilmember O'Doherty doing her best to find topics to perhaps increase turnout at these. Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. And my apologies. I was kind of giggling a little bit when you talked about being on the bandwagon earlier, because I was on that bandwagon when I joined the council in 2014. I was a huge proponent of these, but I just want to echo, I think everything you said is absolutely right. That these maybe aren't functioning as we had hoped that they would be. I just want to make a couple of comments and say, if the council decides to move forward with these, I think we should use the new wards and use it as an education opportunity for people in the new wards. I think we're going to have to continue to push that information out for a while, given the changes in the boundaries. And so I think that would be maybe the way to go. And I guess I would also ask with that being said, if we've got enough time and staff to be able to coordinate all of that and find and reestablish locations and maybe help republish the new ward boundaries to the folks, or maybe at least a link in an advertisement or something to try to push the new ward boundaries out.
Thank you, Councilmember Somerville. Vice Mayor, I'll call in just a second. I have a question or two myself, if I can. And my question is for the city clerk. If the council were to move in a direction where we said we'd like to retain this as an option, a couple of things, occur to me. Fifth Tuesdays, the actual fifth Tuesday occurrence on the calendar isn't going anywhere. And so it could be something that we keep in mind if there is a topic. City clerk, is it your view that we could maybe transition to a kind of a floating kind of save the date approach with these? So if there is something and there are council members, or the council as a whole feels like that would be a great opportunity to talk about the growth plan or something like that, would that be terribly difficult to incorporate, provided we, made sure we have the discussion 2 and 3 weeks out for your office? Do you think that would be reasonable?
Mayor and council, I think that would be pretty reasonable. If we have enough notice to notice out what maybe the topic might be, and get kind of that pre-stuff out of the way, then you can always schedule it in a regular meeting, like the first of the month or something, and say, okay, we're going to schedule this ward meeting for this month. All right.
It's not like we don't know ahead of time when we have a month with the 5 Tuesdays. City manager, I wonder if you have any thoughts about that kind of, maybe transitioning to that approach. Does that seem reasonable? I know occasionally, or quite often, frankly, we have staff that are willing to join us at those as well, to sort of listen, and they have the whole time we've done that. I don't know that would present problems, but I'd like your perspective on it. We kind of move towards the optional maybe type approach.
Mayor, yes, we'll support whatever approach the council want to take.
All right. Vice Mayor, thanks for waiting.
Yeah, no problem. Someone's going to have to remind me if this is at all in our code of conduct, and I'm not sure if it is or not, but I think a quick review on the code of conduct would be a good idea. And if we're throwing out ideas for discussion, and I certainly like the growth idea that Councilor Doherty brought up. I also like the ward issue that Councilor Somerville brought up. I think we can maybe help with the election issue in terms of voter ID. And if that 5th cent is also there, which we're going to be talking about tomorrow night, I think that would be another good discussion topic to at least start to plant the seed on some of these issues, and just kind of throw out, the calendar of events related to the growth plan, and what next regarding the 5th cent, and et cetera. I mean, just have a wide variety of issue and information available to the public.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. This is starting to take shape for me. There's some justification for these when we think there are things that people want to talk to us about. At the same time, people can call us about those things and email us about them all the time. Councilmember Schmeckel, thanks for waiting.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to introduce a new wrinkle here that I don't think we had considered. Ward 2 now has 2 firehouses in it, and Ward 1 has none.
So meeting space also.
Yeah.
Councilmember Harrington.
Thanks, Mayor, and for the second time, I suppose.
It's no problem.
So I guess one thing, as you said, it's taking shape. I will just do my best to not ruin that for you. Okay, so I think there's 2 things going on here. I think there is a need for us to push information out and meet with constituents in sort of a more flexible and longer format. Also, though, the constituents, in my experience, and I can only speak for Ward 1, but in my experience, the folks that are showing up to these meetings are, generally speaking, really sort of like super citizens. They tend to be the really well informed, and So I think on one side, there is this value of the fifth Tuesday of having like longer form conversations about issues with people who have been paying close attention. But I think maybe I would just encourage us as we open this up for some changes into the future. My opinion would be that we should be working, we should be spending these fifth Tuesdays in a way that brings more people into what we're doing as a council. I think that's maybe the public involvement that I would like to see is pushing information more broadly. The folks that show up to the ward meetings are the folks that call me. They, you know, so it tends to feel like a little bit, they show up because they feel like they should, but they also just talk to me about it on the phone. You know, I think that's great in a lot of ways, but I also would like to find a way for us to reach out to a broader constituent base, folks that aren't sort of watching all the meetings and paying attention to the things we do every day. So I don't have a great idea for that, but I think the council should be looking at that for a use of our time.
Thank you, Councilmember Harrington. Council, I apologize. I think I've let this discussion get a little wide-ranging, and what we need to do is decide whether or not we want to do it for this fifth Tuesday or not, and if so, what we want to do. And then perhaps we need to have a larger discussion about these outreach efforts and what that should look like moving forward. Does everyone kind of agree with that assessment? All right, Councilmember Schuster, yes.
I make to amend the approval of the scheduled meetings on there to include the fifth Tuesday from 6:30 to, I believe they said an hour and a half, so it'd be 8 o'clock, if that'd be the correct time schedule. Maybe I misstated it, or was it 6 to 7:30? I think it was 6 to 7:30.
Usually it's 6 to 7:30.
Okay, so I amend my amendment to say that 6 to 7:30 to have ward meetings for those counselors that wish to participate with it. And I make a comment right after I do this that we haven't changed our wards yet. This is what's happening in the next election. We're still exactly representing who we represented a month ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Schuster, and that was a second from Councilmember Gabriel, I believe. And we've had a pretty good discussion about it. Why don't we see if there's any public comment on it? Yes, let's recognize Christopher Stratton. Let Christopher Stratton into the room, and you've got the floor.
Hello, thank you, Council. My comments again are based mainly on the factor of the Council has decided to go with the gentrification of the West Side, and we definitely need to have the capabilities of a open forum communication. As we have lost representation, we've gained 3 members of Council now, but also we have no capability of voting towards them. So the more that we have of open communication with the Council, the better it's going to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stratton, and I'd encourage you to email or communicate further with the Council about what you might think an effective way to have that communication would be in the future. All right. Close the public comment period, and why don't we go to a vote on, no, I've got Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wondered if I could get clarification from the city clerk's office. I think that the new wards are effective now, the way that they were passed and published. If we could just get clarification on that.
Mayor and Council, I believe Councilor Somerville is correct, since we did pass the ordinance and it's effective as soon as it's published.
Thank you, City Clerk. I'm going to help Councilmember Schuster out in that the council members elected to the old seats are still here and they have the same constituencies, but the wards have changed. So I think both of those statements are correct. Let's go to Councilmember Harrington, had a hand up a second ago. I think, yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm just looking for a little bit of clarification. The amendment is to allow optional fifth Tuesdays, is that correct? If you want to go, you can go?
For this upcoming 31st date, fifth Tuesday, okay. Yes, correct.
Thank you, Mayor.
That is the motion. All right, folks, you ready to have a little vote on this? Yeah? Okay. City Clerk, let's have a roll call on Councilmember Schuster's motion.
Cumby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
and Weaver.
Yes.
That is 9 yeses and 0 no, Your Honor.
All right, and City Clerk, I think we probably have to have some discussion about locations and things like that, but we can do that at a different time. All right. We'll follow up, in other words. Yeah, we'll get it figured out. Okay, that motion carries. That takes us to the spot on our agenda for public comments on non-agenda items. Second public comment period on non-agenda items. City Clerk.
Oh, so we still need to set all of the scheduled meetings then.
All right. So a vote on that item, is it?
Yep.
All right. Is that the main motion? That was the main motion originally introduced by Councilmember Schuster, so let's have a roll call vote on that.
Okay. Somerville,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Cumby,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
and Weaver.
Yes.
That is 9 yeses and 0 no, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk Council. That motion carries. Now we'll see if there's public comment on non-agenda items. Christopher Stratton, Mr. Stratton, go ahead. You've got the floor.
Thank you, Council. I just wanted to comment on quite a few things. I've been out of town for the last few months and lots have changed. One thing that makes sad is seeing the situation that we have completely and utterly decided to nix a public look at the police, etc. The fact that backdoor deals have been going on. It's just not a pleasant situation to come back to Laramie and see our town in the way that it is. The fact that we're gentrifying the west side so that agenda items can be placed and that those that are living there don't have a say towards any of it. It's a real sad day in Laramie. Thank you very much for my time for comment.
Thank you for taking time out of your evening to make some comments to us. All right, let's close the public comment period, and that takes us to the final item on the agenda. Councilmember Schuster. Oh, Vice Mayor, I'm sorry. Sound, Vice Mayor. Oh.
Oh, sorry. What about consideration of future council work session topics?
Oh goodness, let's do that as well.
Okay, so I'll just, and I'm not sure if I'll get any support for this, but if we could have a work session, and it certainly doesn't have to be anytime soon, given that we only have 4 fifth Tuesdays a year, if that's correct. I think it's 4. Is some sort of work session related to some communication ideas, you know, how we can achieve that goal. We've tried over the decades, we've tried a couple different avenues, you know, different members on council, and if we can just sort of hash out some of the ideas, I think that would be great.
Looks like there's support for it. So we'll get it on the agenda. Councilmember Harrington.
Mr. Mayor, as a part of that work session, if the vice mayor is amenable to it, I would love some sort of update on where we're at with in the previous budget, we allotted money for a contract position to help us push accurate information out. I feel like that might be a logical thing to discuss at the same time. I don't know that there's an update on it, but I just would like to hear what's happening. If the vice mayor is open to that being a part of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that goes hand in hand.
Councilmember Cumby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm thinking that with the survey process at hand, that if we have that meeting after that initial survey is completed, that may also provide us some information that would help us determine better ways of communication, because we've certainly received input from people at a number of meetings that they feel that they're not getting the information, and I would really like to explore alternatives that might be more effective. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Cumby. Yeah, I think it's certainly the case. This is probably always going to be a challenge. I don't mean to be pessimistic. I just mean I think that's the nature of it. So continuing to think about it and trying to figure out ways to improve or do it better or whatever is a good idea. So I support that as well. Whenever it shows up on the work session, that work session list is not small. Never is. Any other discussion or proposals for work session ideas? All right.
Mayor, I just wanted to point out that the assistant city clerk kept the council members on our toes tonight with the roll call votes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gabriel. Yes. Yeah, the assistant city clerk does a fine job, and we are glad that he is there. All right. You're welcome, Ryan. It's good to see you. Okay. I don't think I've forgotten anything else, but you guys will let me know if I did. I think we're ready for item number 17, Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you. I move we adjourn.
Second from Councilmember O'Doherty. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Meeting is adjourned. See you tomorrow night, everyone. Good evening.
Good night.